Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to tackle something absolutely massive. We are breaking down one of the most abstract, fascinating, and, let's be real, universally confusing concepts out there, finding yourself. But listen, we aren't just going to sit around and muse philosophically. We are breaking this down from the inside out. We're talking classical Jungian psychology, the hard clinical neuroscience of how our brains are literally wired, and some incredibly actionable behavioral psychology. So, who are you, really? It's a heavy question, right? Just think about it for a second. How much of your identity is truly yours? And how much of it is just, a carefully constructed mask? A mask that's been totally shaped by societal expectations, how you were raised, and all those subtle little fears whispering in the back of your mind. We all walk around feeling like we're the ones in the driver's seat. But if we actually stop and look inward, we might realize we're just blindly following a built-in navigation system we barely even understand. So here is our roadmap for The Explainer. First, we'll look at the illusion of identity. Then, integrating your hidden shadow. Third, we'll cover the neuroscience of self. And finally, setting your true aim. Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, the illusion of identity, or shedding the mask. To really get this, we have to talk about the legendary 20th century Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. He basically framed the human mind as a highly complex piece of navigation software. And the thing is, if we don't bother to learn how this software works, we risk just kind of wandering through life completely aimless. Now, a huge chunk of this mental software is what Jung called the persona. Think of it as the outward mask we actively display to the world. Literally, from day one, we're conditioned, right? We're taught what's acceptable and what's definitely not. When we're kids and we expressed certain messy emotions or desires and get shut down for it, we quickly learn to bottle them up. Over time, we build up this persona just so we can function in society, handle our relationships, and ultimately gain acceptance. But here's where we run into trouble. We have the persona, our everyday social mask, and then we have the true self. The true self is the actual, authentic totality of both our conscious and unconscious mind, the whole shebang. The problem is, the more we lean into and identify with our social mask, the more we completely lose touch with the true self. We literally start believing that we are the mask. But for Jung, the ultimate goal of life, a process he called individuation, is to bridge that massive gap. It's about returning to the totality of who we actually are. Moving to part 2, integrating your hidden shadow and exploring the depths. Because think about it, if we're constantly suppressing these big parts of ourselves just to build up our persona, where does all that suppressed stuff actually go? Well, it goes straight into the shadow. And as Jung brilliantly put it, there is no move or evasive tactic that separates the individual from their psychological shadow. You cannot run it. All our rejected fears, our unspoken desires, our deepest vulnerabilities, they don't just magically vanish because we refuse to look at them. No way. They are operating right there beneath the surface. I mean, have you ever just intensely disliked someone and you couldn't really figure out why? Jung argued that when we're deeply disturbed by certain traits in other people, it's actually because those exact same traits are hiding out in our own shadow, and we're just projecting them outward. Now, what's really interesting here is how Jung mapped it all out using archetypes. These are basically deep-rooted, universal psychological blueprints stored in our collective unconscious. So you've got the hero, which is that conscious drive pushing us toward purpose and growth. Then you have the shadow, holding all those repressed fears and hidden potentials. And you also have the anima and animus. These represent our internal feminine and masculine energies that desperately need to be balanced. The key takeaway here? True psychological growth is absolutely not about eliminating your shadow or fighting these forces. It's about integration. Becoming a whole person means actually learning from your fears and balancing those internal energies rather than just rejecting them. Part 3, the neuroscience of self, or rewiring the hardware. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Jung's psychological software, but what is physically going on inside your head? Let's pivot to some hard, modern clinical neuroscience from Dr. David Vago. 86 billion. That is a staggering number. That is the number of individual neurons you are born with. But here's the catch. Over the course of your life, you're actually going to lose about 2 billion of those neurons, and your brain doesn't really make a ton of new ones. So if we're constantly losing brain cells, how on earth do we continuously construct our identity, our memories, and our habits? Well, the answer comes down to this absolutely mind-blowing number, 150 trillion. Those are the synaptic connections bridging all those neurons together. Your brain is continuously being modified through these tiny connections based on your everyday experiences. In neuroscience, this is called activity-dependent plasticity. It basically means that every single thought you have, Every emotion you feel and every habit you form is literally, physically re-sculpting the biological structure of your brain. And this neuroplasticity, it happens in a continuous, lightning-fast loop of selfing. Get this, a single moment of processing takes just half a second, 500 milliseconds. During steps 1 and 2, which take up the first 300 milliseconds, your brainstem and subcortical regions are already filtering out useless info and prepping your body for action. And here's the crazy part. This happens before you are even consciously aware of it. It isn't until step 3, the final 200 milliseconds, that your prefrontal cortex kicks in and you can actually consciously evaluate what's going on. Meaning, your brain is actively reacting to the outside world before the conscious you even realizes it's happening. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why mental training, things like mindfulness, is just so neurologically powerful. As Dr. Vago's research shows, mindfulness essentially acts as a wedge of meta-awareness that you jam directly into that tiny 500 millisecond loop. Doing this literally strengthens the frontoparietal control network in your brain. It physically protects your brain against normal age-related shrinking, and it dramatically cuts down the time you spend trapped in those awful negative rumination cycles. You are biologically training your own brain to hit pause between an unconscious trigger and your conscious reaction. It's a total game changer. Part 4, setting your true aim and tackling the external reality. All right, we've looked at the unconscious mind and the biological hardware of the brain. Now let's zoom all the way out to how you actually interact with the physical world, bringing in some behavioral psychology from Dr. Jordan Peterson. His core idea here is you see exactly what you aim at. He points to the famous invisible gorilla experiment to prove this. If you haven't seen it, it's wild. Viewers are asked to watch a video and just count how many times a team in white shirts passes a basketball. Because their visual aim is entirely locked onto those white shirts, literally half of the viewers completely miss a person in a full gorilla suit strolling right through the middle of the game. The big takeaway? Your literal physical perception of reality is entirely dictated by the aim you input into your mental navigation system. If the world is only manifesting to you in a totally negative, miserable way, you really have to stop and ask yourself, what exactly am I aiming at? So how do we fix our aim and cut out all this unnecessary suffering? You do it by expanding your domain of competence, and I mean starting ridiculously small. Peterson suggests just sitting in your bedroom and genuinely asking yourself, okay, what bothers me in this room? Do you see a messy stack of papers, some tangled cables in the corner? Spend exactly 10 minutes fixing them. Perfect your mundane, everyday routines. And this is absolutely crucial. Stay within your competence. If you're walking down the street and see a broken down helicopter, you don't just march up and start tinkering with the engine, right? You have no idea how to fix the helicopter. Stick to what you can control. Because as Peterson notes, the things you do every day, those are the most important things you do. And if you really think about it, it makes total sense. Your daily routines make up 50% of your entire life. By making 100 tiny, small adjustments to your immediate physical environment, you're clearing away all the traps on the rubbish. You're finally aligning that newly integrated internal self we talked about with a highly competent, well-ordered external world. Bringing this all together, we realize that the self is an ongoing journey. It is absolutely not a static destination. Finding yourself isn't about taking some quick online personality quiz. It's about putting in the hard work. It requires integrating the dark hidden parts of your psychological shadow. It requires utilizing the activity-dependent plasticity of your brain to actively and mindfully rewire your habits. And it requires setting a genuine, highly competent aim in your external environment, day by day, room by room. Which leaves us with one final, incredibly empowering thought from Dr. Vago's research. Look, you don't have control over what happened to you in the past, but going forward, you have the neuroplastic power to choose exactly how you pay attention to your thoughts and emotions moment to moment. So I'll leave you with this one question to ponder today. What will you fill your mind with today?